Hello everyone, my name's Thomas, aka MrWartburg. Welcome to the channel where today we're going to be talking about Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, the third film in the Ant-Man trilogy series, whatever you want to call it. It's not really thematically a trilogy as much as any of the MCU movies are, so I don't know if trilogy is the right word, even though technically it is a set of three movies. It's kind of weird. It's not like, Star Wars trilogy or Lord of the Rings trilogy where they're like one cohesive story told over three parts. It's just three films in a series. But I have some thoughts on it. So let's get into it. Saw it today on Saturday. Didn't go opening day because my dad had shoulder. This is always tough to say. Shoulder surgery. He had a rotator cuff. So he's been stuck at home for a couple weeks. He's got 4 weeks to go left on recovery. But he's so bored. I got him out of the house and went to the movie. You can see here. Took him. We got some decent seats at our local theater. And while we went on a matinee, I actually wouldn't have minded going opening night. I saw some internet chatter, people, the pre-reviews, early reviews came out and said, maybe the MCU has lost a step, that things just weren't hitting as right. Maybe we're having some MCU fatigue. So I was like, okay, maybe I'll be fine seeing this on a matinee if it's not as good as people are saying it was, especially because the Rotten Tomato score was like in the low 50s, which again, that's an aggregate, it's an average, it's not actually, an indicative of how good a movie is. It's even less like reliable than say something like Metacritic for video games, but I went and saw it, and I would say I was pretty pleasantly surprised. I had quite a bit of fun with it. Obviously, there were some things I didn't like, which I'll get into in a little bit. In particular, one, like I want to say maybe the secondary antagonist of the film. Man, it's a pretty big miss, but the point is that they nailed the primary antagonist, that being Jonathan Majors Kang, and definitely nailed the setup for him going forward in the MCU as an ongoing recurring villain. Obviously, we saw that character first in Loki, the Immortus version of that character at the end of season 1, and then the post-credit tag, spoilers by the way, we're going full spoilers here, the post-credit tag sets up season 2 of Loki, which of course makes sense given the connective tissue there with Kang in both that show and this movie. And then the version of Kang we got here is much more akin to the traditional Kang the Conqueror version that you get in the comics and several animated adaptations. One that sticks in my brain is the Kang the Conqueror from Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes. It's that animated show that ran before they kind of Disneyfied the Avengers animated show and rebooted it to look like the MCU. And I really like that version. And this is akin to that. Obviously, different motivations and a little bit different characterization. He doesn't play it quite as over the top hamminess as like an animated character might. But man, he sells just menace, just pure stone cold brutality. And I absolutely loved Major's performance here. Paul Rudd, similarly, as always, is excellent in the role as Scott Lang, the Ant-Man. Recast the daughter, Catherine Newton. I also really like her. I've liked her since she showed up on Supernatural all those years ago as one of the daughters of somebody who gets kind of roped into the Winchester shenanigans on that show. And I thought she more than held her own here as Cassie Lang trying to find her own footing, especially now that her family's back post blip because she had to live through it without them. We see more with Hope and Janet and Hank, and their dynamic is a really solid evolution from when we left them in Ant-Man and the Wasp. And I especially like how they use Hank in the back half of the movie. He gets some pretty fun moments as the OG Ant-Man, especially in the final battle. But like I said, obviously there was some missteps. The first one, and I think this is going to probably be the most common refrain from this movie, is man, they whiffed on MODOK so hard. The setup's not bad, especially, I said earlier, it's not really a trilogy, but it kind of is because they bring in some characters from past stuff, like the big one, the big one being the person that plays MODOK, which it's Darren Cross. I actually didn't see that coming. I didn't spoil myself at all on that. I didn't know he was going to be in the movie. So when it was revealed that it was Darren Cross, the antagonist from the first movie, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then it completely goes off the rails from there. They do nothing that actually works with that character from the moment of the reveal. It's bizarre. It's one of those things where they kind of Disneyfy it, which is like they should have gone so much darker with that character. He should have been. They allude to him being unstable because obviously he was in the first movie too, but they don't really go anywhere with it. And then they have the gall to redeem the character who tried to kill a kid in the first movie. Like, no, you didn't need to do that. You could have had him just turn on Kang and not be a good guy. You could totally do that with a story instead of having him redeemed in the hero's eyes and like die a hero. That was completely unnecessary, completely comes out of left field, and is in no way earned in any part of the story. It just does not land. But I will say for the rest of the core hero cast, they all fit, everything works. I like, the bonding between, Paul Rudd, who's trying to like kind of force it a little too much, but understands he needs to not. And I thought that dynamic was really well done. Eventually, Lily doesn't have a lot to do, but I have heard that maybe they had to edit around some of her scenes because she couldn't be on set as much because she wasn't vaccinated, which wouldn't surprise me given where this would have been in production during COVID. Obviously, movie now versus like a year and a half ago. Different world. So I'm not going to, begrudge that too much. Just would have been nice to get more with her, especially the finale where she shows up to save Scott at the end. And again, that was a moment they could have left so much darker than they did. And I think it would have worked, would have fit. That Scott sacrificed himself, Hope came back to get him, to stop Kang from getting out of the portal. And then they're set up to they're cut off, they're in the quantum realm. But we know, Hank and Janet and Cassie are out there, trying to get them. So there's hope they're going to get him for sure. But they could have left him in the quantum realm and maybe told more stories in the quantum realm. That would have been pretty neat because the world they set up is really cool. That first, I want to say hour 15 minutes of them getting into, the setup where Scott's at, where the world is at with him as Ant-Man, and then going into the quantum realm is fantastic. It was the thing that kept sticking in my brain was like, wow, this feels like the pilot of Farscape. And I love that pilot. Like down to the whole, like they have like the translator microbes from Farscape where they have to like inject it into his foot and then he can understand what the hell everyone's talking about. They have a moment very reminiscent of that. And even Chidi from The Good Place shows up. I'm blanking on his name. I should have written it down. But you know him when you see him, and that's a great show. And he plays a telepath, gets some pretty solid lines. And it's very alien, and they really sell how alien this would be to like just a normal blue-collar guy like Scott. Absolutely love that, because he's freaked out, and he should be. And I thought they really, really did that quite well. And I thought everything, the plot to stop Kang, I thought worked really, really well. And then Scott realizing, oh shit, did we do the bad thing? Like, by stopping him, did we doom everything else? And then they kind of circle back to it again. It's played for laughs. And then about 2 minutes later, you kind of get that twinge of, oh, I don't know, did we? And then you get the post-credit scene where it's the Council of Kangs, and they're coming to wreck everything. So maybe Scott did do the wrong thing, right? Because Kang says earlier in the movie, what's coming is way worse than me, and I tried to stop them. So he's kind of setting himself up as, while yes, a bad guy doing it for good reasons, which I thought was an interesting take on Kang the Conqueror. And if the other Kangs really are that bad, maybe they'll be wishing this Kang was still around. And, spoilers, probably is. There's this multi-universal like engine core that he gets sucked into. So of course he's going to get spit out in some version of the multiverse, and we'll see him again down the road. And I want to say, Jonathan Majors, man, I'm going to be very happy to see him in future properties in the MCU, whether that be in their shows or the movies, because man, that dude's fucking awesome. Jonathan Majors is cool. Let's see. I've been recording for like 15 minutes here, so I'm gonna have to edit this down a little bit. I'm gonna try to get this close to 10 minutes. If I had to give it a score, I don't know. It's not as good as the first Ant-Man. I think it's better than the second. I saw some people saying the second one was more fun. I want to say this one has different stakes. The first two are much more low-key, not end of the world kind of stakes, whereas this one is far more, it's not even cosmic because it's not in space, but it feels like that. And that's a little out of pocket for where Ant-Man is as a hero, but it kind of fits given the supporting cast he has with Hank and Janet and Hope being essentially super geniuses. So I think it works still with Paul Rudd especially. I still think this is better than the second one. Quantumania is better than Ant-Man and the Wasp for me. And mostly that rests on the fact that Jonathan Majors' villain performance is so much better than anything we got in the second film. And then that second film had Walton Goggins, man. And he was just like a tertiary antagonist in that movie. They totally wasted him. This movie, though, they don't waste the main villain. They absolutely nailed it in every way. Even the flashbacks with Janet, I mean, that's just how that would end up coming back to tie into the main narrative. I loved it. So I gotta have this as the second best Ant-Man film. So, hard to say. I'm working on how I want to give things as a score, even if I want to do so. But if I had to, I'd say it's a 3.5 out of 5 ish, maybe a 4, because that villain performance is rock solid. It's excellent. But I'd probably lean more towards 3.5. So take that for what it's worth. If you like these kind of one-off reviews, let me know in the comments below. I'm considering doing them more often as we go. Mandalorian, Ted Lasso, now Star Trek Picard's out, and I'm really liking that. I'm thinking about doing more consistent one-off reviews where it's just me for like 10 minutes tops, give or take, depending on the topic, of course. And when I'm doing movies I know my friends might like, I might have them in, alongside me with like a guest review, and we'll see where things go from there. So again, let me know what you think in the comments. Of course, like and subscribe at YouTube. You know the rigmarole. See you next time. I'm guessing it'll be 2 weeks' time-ish, maybe a week and a half for Mandalorian's premiere. See ya.